What we have here is a failure to communicate. Alright. I know, I still got a mess going on here, don't I? Alright. Where am I at? Hey! I'm about to assemble Major Tom's short block. Yay! Okay. There's a couple things going on here. Well, let's start here with the cases. Now, as we know, oh, I got the other case in the wash tub. Or out of the wash tub. I got the other case somewhere. Oh yeah, it's over in the dirty room. I know this room ain't that clean either. I try to keep it up, but you know, you get involved in these projects. There's only so many hours in the day, plus I need to go out and work out in the real world. Can't just hide here. And it's not like I actually get paid to do this. I wanted to, you know, earlier on we saw the damage on Tommy's case there, if you remember. Okay, I'll go get it. You don't have to yell. Right, I turned the compressor off too while I'm there. Ta-da. Uno momento, por favor. So as we clean the tar out of this thing, we did notice, you know, somebody been in there. But you know what? After working on that, like, whoever welded this did a beautiful job. I don't know who welded this, but like, they did a hell of a job. Really nice job. I'm happy about that. And so I ended up lapping the cases together one more time. Just to get up near the top in that weak spot we were talking about. And I finished off with I used a 120 to start just because they were damaged. And then I finished off with a 220. And it came out pretty good. Now I already installed the new bearing races in here. And I mean, that's easy enough to figure out. Sorry I didn't film it. But we got our matched bearings. Put this here for the moment. And we got our matched bearings. And like I say, even though they're expensive, they do come pre-spaced. Okay, they come with everything. Now, you can buy these spacers. You can buy a kit of these, of various, right? And you want to get this thing down to a thou. So if you're making a test bearing, like I was using in my little line boring kit there, if you want to make a test bearing, what you do is you take an old one. Now I always keep, like I used to do a lot of port and polishing and stuff, right? It's this thing. Ooh, you don't want that. Well, I guess that's it. I used to do a lot of port and polishing and stuff, so I've got, you know, a fairly decent selection of abrasives and that for my die grinder. And I like my angle die grinder. Mac Tools makes an angle. They're the only ones I know that make it. It's not they do make a 90. Everybody makes a 90. You can buy a cheap 90. But they make one that's 70 degrees. And I found that really nice for getting in when I'm shaping heads, shaping ports. So all you do is you take like a flapper, if you're making a test bearing, you don't want anything too solid. Where Where is that little unit? But you wanna hone them out a bit. I mean, you could use a sun and hone. I don't want this near my dirty section. We'll find it in a second. You can use like a sun and hone, like a hone awl. And a hone awl is designed, it's a self-centering hone, and it's designed to run on a drill. Or you can run it on a Sun machine, whatever works. Well, when we get over there, I will, over there, you're opposite. When we get over there, I'll see if I can find it there. I want to show you the honing job I did on the barrels. And I've now got Tommy's wheels in my truing stand. Now, can you knock the wheels out of true when you're taking the engine apart? Yeah, you can, but you usually don't, but it's really good to double check. Now, there is no way, I didn't mess with these hardly at all. In fact, I had them in my jag, right, so that I would keep the flywheels, you know, from being squished or pulled or anything like that while I was putting in the wrist pin bushings and then reaming out the wrist pin bushings with self-centering ream. But I threw his flywheels, so this is what I get to work with. And like I say, used flywheels can be a real son of a gun, or as my brother says, some kind of gun. Here, let's see how we can do this. I know. Boomer operations one more time. There we go. Yeah. It's like there's a ghost in this machine. There we go. I'm hoping you can see this. I have this other 4K camera. I thought it was just hard for me to kind of hold it and stuff and this and that. You know, one of those little action whatever. I lent it to my brother Wes. So he's got all these old cards and Harley cards and old Harley mags, old Easy Riders. I think he even has number 1. And I lent it to him. He wanted to take pictures of it and stuff and then put them on eBay. And he's in his 70s, but okay, there's Tommy's flywheels. Now, did I put both of these flywheels this far out? I don't think so. Even when I was taking off the case, right, because the bearings are press fit onto the sprocket shaft, and even when I was taking the case off, I don't think I put these this far out. Now, I did ride Tommy's bike there, and like I say, it ran decent, it was decent, but I was only in town, I didn't get on the highway. And where you're really going to notice vibration is on the highway. Well, if you get the RPMs up, these things get spinning. You know, don't forget, a stock Harley fully pinned, so this had a stock ignition in it. Hang on a sec. This had a stock ignition in it, so this thing stalls out at 5,250 RPM. Right, 5250. Breadline, because the ignition. Now you're working for a street bike. You're working your piston speed out to feet per minute, right? And that's how you get your red line. So like on the Harleys, you know, you want to keep street reliability, but you want your performance. So I try to keep it. I try to keep it under 5,000 feet per minute. So you get past that and you can get excessive wear really quick. So like, you know, a drag bike will go a lot more than that. But they're rebuilding, or they're throwing top ends off and on, you know, in between races. But we want our performance. I want my bike to perform. I want to pass a truck when I want to pass a truck. And I don't know how many times I've come across guys going, holy smokes, man, I went to pass the truck, and all of a sudden my bike stopped running, like not died. He hit his rev limiter. I've heard that from a lot of guys. Well, I hit my rev limiter, I thought I was going to die because their car was coming. And I'm beside a big truck. And I hate that, right? So I find with, you know, stock stroke, I try to keep it around, I'll go 5100 FPS, but I try to keep it there, 48, 51, 52 maybe on mine. I'm not sure. And that way you can get that performance. You can get past. I mean, you're passing a truck. You see a car all of a sudden coming. You know, you want to gear down and give her. Just go, right? You don't need the bike stalling out at you or rev limiting out at you when you're halfway through this whole thing. Especially if there's another car behind you or another bike beside you or with you, you know. That's how people get killed. So at higher speeds, of course, you're going to feel more vibration. Now, let's just say the flywheels went out that far from me handling them. Honestly, nah, I don't think so. Which means my brother was running a vibrating bike. But how would he know if he's puking all that oil out going down the highway? I mean, how much highway riding could he do with that going out of there like that? And it was coming out of his engine and his transmission, right? So I'm going to true these in, and like I was telling you, here, I'll get back over there. Let's get back over there. I was telling you about Big Bertha, right? I also use my press when I'm straightening out flywheels. But you never want to whack your flywheels. I was thinking of, what is it? You them boys been whacking off my tool shed? No. So you're grabbing her by the ears, right? I know you guys love that shit. Okay. So I got her by one of the ears. I'll find out where it's out, and then I'll give it a tap. Now the lead will not bend your flywheel. And I carefully tap as I go. So what I do, I should have showed you this first. So what I do is I'm spinning my flywheel slowly. You don't want your rod too tight either. And that's why I'm making like a homemade jig, right, with some bearings for the shafts to run on. You know. You run a shaft here at the end of the thread, so in your sprocket shaft, another one here at the end of your pinion, or anywhere on your pinion. You just don't want it in the way of where you're running your gauges, and you want your gauge as close to the flywheel as you can get to get your accuracy, right? So, okay, so I'm thinner in here than I am up here. Excuse me. Sorry. I'm thinner up near the crank pin. It's right about here. Oh yeah, I'll enlarge it again. What the hell is the boomer doing now? I don't know what the hell he's doing. What the heck? Hey, maybe I'm even getting better at this low-tech solution. Where am I? Too high, too high. Ah, there's the tuning stand. Ooh. I know it's a Chinese stand. Maybe one day I'll be rich and famous like those Hollywood bikers and get myself a real one. Hey, hopefully you can see that. So I'm going wider. I'm just before my crank pin. It's my tightest place, right? So I'm going wider, wider, wider. It stops. So I'll just mark that area to know where my wide point is. And I'm coming back, and then that's my narrow point. So I'm narrow here and wide down there. So what I want to do, where I marked it, again, and be nice to your gauges if you can. Let's take a look at that. There's my mark. Oh, and I'll grab my hammer here. I'll give it a whack. Now that's, what was it, over 10 thou. So I'll go whack. Now normally I would start on my press, get something happening, and then just tap her off. But I just wanted to kind of show it as an example. You know, because I did last time. A little tight there. Can you see the gauge? So I went from about what was that, 15, 17 thou out. I just knocked her down to under 10-ish, around 10. I don't know, you can tell me. You can bitch at me in the comments. But you need these things under 1 thou. And I've used like, I've done the dynamically balanced S&S bottom ends and stuff. You know, they come fully assembled. I don't like it. I find them very vibrating. I do like the static balancing better. But anytime you get a set of flywheel sent to you or whatever, you gotta check your true. Your true will add excessive vibration. And don't forget, like our clearance, okay, so we're pressed on one side of the crank, right? With your Timken tapers. And then on the other side, we've got a clearance of like under 1 thou in the pinion, right? So there's no real room for this. It'll eat your pinion bearings, right? And it causes vibration, and the looser those pinions are, the more vibration you'll get too. So you want to keep those things within spec. And just because you've got instruments to read your clearances, if it doesn't roll free, it's too tight. I don't care. You can say to me whatever, and I've seen many machinists, they go in, they use only their instruments, things aren't rolling right, they get out on the highway and the thing blows up. It self-destructs. She wants to roll, she wants to rock, she wants to groove, she wants to serve you well. You just gotta have a little zen, have a little patience, and you'll do good. So I'm going to be truing those in for the major. And then we got over here. What do we got over here? Woohoo. Now. Ah, some honing stuff going on there. Alright, so now anytime you hone your cylinder, you're supposed to use some kind of torque plate so that you're putting the same torque that you would be when it's bolted in the engine, because there's a deformation that goes on, and so it's good to use torque plates. Can you hone a pan head or a shovel head or a knuckle head, even a 4 or 5, without torque plates? Yes, you can. I know, quit yelling at me. I know what the experts say. Whatever, dude. But yes, you can. Now I've got a boring bar over there. I need a new receiver and a blade for it, but where would I use my boring bar? This is my honing bar. Now I'm a self-centering hone. Where would I use my boring bar? I would use that, say if I'm boring out some 883 cylinders to 1200, because you're taking off quite a bit. Or if I had a damage there, you know, where I had to take out 20 or 30 thou, so that I could hone them up to the next size piston. Because even though the boring bar is designed that when your cylinder's sitting up and the bore comes up, you know, it makes everything perpendicular, just like line boring kind of idea, right? But on some of them, it's like a minimum of a 10 thou that you're taking out. So it's not something I would use unless there was some real damage on the cylinder and I had to take out quite a few thou. I'm not going to do it with my hones. It's, you know, no. No, not never. Never say no, not never. Ever. So, and anytime you're honing anything, line boring anything, lapping anything, you can clean this stuff like these cases. Okay? I bead blasted them. And I got a golden rule of bead blasting too. I've seen guys bead blast stuff and then they wash them in the dunk tank and they put it aside, let them dry, or they'll blow them off and put them aside and they think that's done. No. You take those things, you wash them, you go outside or whatever, you blow them off. When the blind holes, like bolt holes and stuff, when they stop spitting aggregate back in your face, that's when you know you've done your final cleanup. And sometimes I'll clean, like Tommy's cases here, I've washed those and blown those off at least 3 times after. And any time that you're lapping anything or cutting anything, you're leaving behind a residue. Even though, like these cylinders, I've washed these cylinders. I don't know if you can. All right. And anytime you start to hone a cylinder, the thing is, like this is, okay, this is a self-centering hone. You don't run these past 250 RPM. You can buy actually honing drills, run by air. They're nice to operate because they're nice and light, but you know, my compressor, it's a fair size compressor, but no, it just gives me a headache. And I live in a rainforest in between 2 deserts in the mountain. There's a desert that way and there's a desert that way, and then I'm in this rainforest strip here, just north of Spokane, Washington, and we get a lot of moisture in our compressors. Yes, I know I have a moisture trap and everything, but it seems to want to, on the ones I've had in the past, it seems to kill the bearings in them really quick. So I use the electric one, but I've got control over my finger. I know my 250 RPM, right? So yes, you can hone your shovel head. Do I have shovel head jigs for? You bet I do. You bet I do. I got them for pans, I got them for shovels. There's one of my jigs right here, courtesy of S&S. Right. I've also got S&S version for Evo Solutions, and my spacer, and then my pan head spacer. I don't know why I would have a Sportster spacer. Those guys never want to spend money on their bikes. I'm not doing it for free for those guys, just because they got a cheap bike. So getting to these self-centering hones, Sonnen makes them. My favorite. This isn't a Sonnen. I'm up in Kanekistan. I'm on a budget. Lyle makes them. There's a few companies that make them, right? So you're washing your cylinders. And that's what I was going to show you. Anytime you're using any kind of aggregate or whatever on a cylinder, you want to use a light oil to clean them up. Washing them in bar salt gets, you know, a lot of the heavier stuff off, but it doesn't do the job. And then you're going to have all this dirt come out of your crosshatch, or, you know, even your pinion bearing race. You're going to have all this dirt come out, and it's going to go through your engine. Yay! So you did all this work just so you could prematurely wear your unit. So you just use a light oil, and you get in there, and you rubber. And the oil is going to pick it up. That's why I love using WD-40 for cleaning stuff. First off, well, cleaning my bike before I wash it, because first off, it doesn't hurt rubber. So when you're using stuff like, you know, brake clean, carb clean, this clean, that clean, these things are hard on rubber, and they deteriorate rubber. And, you know, as much as we like. Alright, so this has been washed a couple of times in the dunk tank, but here's what's coming out of my hone. It's coming out of my crosshatch. And the oil I'm using is just a light, of course it's Lucas, but just tool oil. So I still gotta clean these. Something else I wanted to mention, like see the head gasket surface here? Okay, it's a little dirty because I've been handling it and stuff, right? Especially, you know, going in and out of the wash tank, and I'm touching it with my ugly hands. Anytime you get a engine gasket kit, if you're buying head gaskets, and you get a multi-layered metal head gasket, you don't want any residue of old gasket on there, because then that thing won't seat, and you have a good chance of blowing your head gasket. My favorite head gaskets for these Evil Solutions, my favorite ones, like I love James head gaskets, and they make various ones, but the S&S, you don't need the O-rings with S&S. I don't know why everybody has O-rings. Why can't just put the holes right there, but S&S does. I'm just trying to see if I got one kicking here. No. I don't see one exactly right now. And then a lot of guys like these ones with the bead on them, and you got that nice metal O-ring there. And then there's the good old blues, which my brother, the Duke, he doesn't like too much. He had bad experience with those. Probably because he had warped heads. Hey, it's just what happens. And shovel heads are really bad for warped heads. And we'll go into that when we start doing these heads. So like, so I bolt these torque plates on this Evil Solution. This is Tommy's. And I do it in the same sequence I would as if I was putting it on the bike. So I'm like 9 foot-pounds, 9 foot-pounds, 9, 9. And then I go around 15, 15, 15, 15. Now, the manual tells you, you know, then go a quarter turn, a full quarter turn. And that's great. I go to 43 foot-pounds on my street engines. I run a 96 with a fairly extreme cam, a Zipper's 629. Mother's running a 80-inch with 10.5 to 1 pistons in it and cammed up and stuff. And my brother's shovel head, which is also a 96, same thing. Mind you, him I ran, yeah, shovel head's not the same as the Evolution, sorry. I'm old, okay? And I'm a crusty. But I run Tony's see, it's 55, 75 foot-pounds on the shovel head. So, you know, I try to get in there. I don't like 55 foot-pounds, especially when we're running a high compression piston and stuff. So I run around 70, you know, on those. So I got my torque plates, I did my hones. So I'll finish, I'll go wash this baby. I did wash that one. And then I'm going to clean that gasket surface with like carb cleaner or brake clean, whatever I got that doesn't leave a residue. And same with this one, and the base gasket surface I'll do the same with. Then I'm going to install them. Now I got the cases ready to install. I'm happy with finishing off the lapping of the cases at 220. The wrist pins, yeah, the wrist pins are done on that. Now Tommy's bike's a little different. We were running on a budget and the price of pistons has doubled, and it's god awful. Like, it's god awful. It's god awful what liberals did to our American cousins. It's god awful what liberals did to Kanakistan. It's just ungodly, man. So, you know, I got this going through nice. I got this going through nice. And I'm happy with that. And like I say, the clearance on that's half a thou, man. 0005. Right? Can you accidentally go just a bit looser? Well, yeah, you can. You know, it's the specs on them are your ultimate specs. So you're going as close as you can. And if your gauges, your mics, or whatever you're using, you know, they say it's this much, but it doesn't roll, it doesn't turn, it doesn't slide, it's not right. So you could be just having a bad day with your gauges. If you're stuck in Kanakistan on a budget, you might be using Chinese gauges. And you know, I got Mitsutoyo and stuff. I like my Japanese mics and stuff. So on these, okay, on these cylinders, I wanted to say something else about those cylinders, about honing. Yeah, so I'll start with, like S&S, they tell you, you know, finish with a, I think it's a 220 to 280 is where they like theirs. The heavier the crosshatch, the more oil you're going to hold. And so when your rings go up, right, and then you fire, all that oil in the crosshatch gets burnt, right? And so it goes through your exhaust. And that oil is hard on your valves. You know, it's bad enough that we got crap gas, and what, we're in World War 16 right now, and the gas is even crappier than normal. Now, I'm not suggesting you do this, because I would not suggest that. But you know, I gotta run. It's a mid-grade that they sell you for, like, if you're running your snow blowers, your lawnmowers, your boat. Now, you don't want to be running anything with ethanol in it, because it destroys, especially on two strokes, it destroys all the rubber. And you got, you know, those little diaphragms in the two strokes, and when they harden up, you know, your two strokes don't like to run anymore. I had a lawnmower once. I still got it, but I had to go through it and everything, and it had regular gas in it, and it deteriorated the hose, and I kept getting this ooze, this black ooze going into my carb and plugging up my carb, and then I'd have to pretty much drain the carb every time. But also that stuff, you know, you got rubber on the end of your needle for your seat, and it hardens up your needles. And then all of a sudden, you know, you're flooding all the time. You don't understand why. Now on the fuel injection, of course, it's just a little different. You get away with a little more because you don't have a float and quite as much. There's still rubber components in there, you know, things that press fit. But it is what it is. So I'm not suggesting that you get marked gas and run it in your bike by any means. No. All right. so she's done. She's going to get washed, and then I'm going to rub her and her down with oil, have the cylinders clean, have my base gasket surface area clean, have my head gasket surface clean. Somebody was asking me about, hey, could you use your mandrel on the bottom? Could you use it on the top? Could you use it on your head? Can you use it in a boat? Can you use it on a plane? Dr. Seuss. I mean, you could. You can. I mean, even the shovel head, which we'll be doing here in the future. Oh, we got some pretty cool shovel head projects coming up. Yeah, I could run that mandrel over this. Right? Now, I'll show you a couple things about the poor old shovel heads that seem to get insulted quite a bit online, which pisses me off because, like I think I was saying in the last film I did, I mean, Harley's got a quality control with these four valved heads. Well, not the heads themselves, but with the engines, because of quality control. And of course, now there's a recall on the air boxes because they don't know how to build an intake breather or an intake air box. It's just crazy. After 100 years, you can't design an air box. That's like these car companies. They got doors flying open. What, you mean after 100 years you don't know how to build a door latch? Give me a break. I got a set of 4-valve heads we're going to put on something too coming up in the future. Oh, and something else I wanted to mention. I'm probably going to use the Loctite 515 on Major Tom's cases as my sealant. Anytime you get, what has he got for, what did I get him? What did I get him for engine gasket kit? Yeah. James is my favorite. They're my staple. Do they have their bad days? Yeah, everybody does. But they're my staple. I pretty much know what I'm getting. I like what they do. I'm not a kinetic gasket fan at all. Right? And one thing I did notice about prices, so anytime you're using any of these metal coated gaskets, you know, don't spray them with gasket goop. Well, first off, the goop doesn't stick to them. They're kind of like a Teflon coat. Ooh, you want to do that? Too shiny and new. All right, so wrist pin bushings are done. Cylinders are honed. Because we're on a budget on Major's bike, these are S&S cast pistons. So they're not like a high compression forged piston and all that one. You know, they're like an 8-to-1 cast piston, which is why I picked out the cam I did for them, because the cam makes good static compression. The things I like to look over when I'm picking out a cam is where my intake opens, my exhaust closes. So you know, when you're first looking at your cam specs, you got intake open, close, exhaust open, close. And I look at where my intake opens and my exhaust closes. That's one of the first things I look at. And if you add those two numbers up, that's the time that both valves are open. Now, the lower the number, the less time both valves are open. The more squish you make. So like if you've got a 15 and a 15, okay, you got 30 degrees on your timing on your flywheels where both valves are open. So that it just tells me automatically that I start closing earlier as my piston's coming up. There's a difference between static compression and mechanical compression. Okay, so mechanical compression gives your overall mechanical compression as if the the cylinder squishes all the way up and the valves close during the whole thing, and that's how you read that. Basically, the static compression basically is with the engine running and with the valves opening and closing for you. So like if you get the tighter the number you get when you add those two together, the more squish you're going to make. And so like if you got a stock like a stock style piston, like it's an S&S piston, but it's, you know, it's stock style piston, whereas the other pistons I put in Mother's bike, that's a 10.5-1 Wiseco piston, which also makes all S&S's pistons these days. I like TRW pistons. I remember back in the early 80s when S&S was using TRW, they did have some issues, but they worked it out. They fixed that. They were, I mean, I think it's corporate that changes this stuff. And the reason I think that is because I used to be able to buy different pistons for different strokes for different compressions. And now you get one piston that fits multiple strokes. And to change your compression, you have to use shorter or longer barrels, right? And to up your compression or whatever. And there was one other thing. Oh, and then so you have to change your intake manifold, because you gotta, if you got a taller barrel, you need a longer manifold to fit proper. And especially on the Evo Solutions, you can't play them around a bit like you can shovel heads. You know, you don't have that nice twisting and turning and the bands, right? And same with Twinkies as Evos. And so if you go shorter, then all of a sudden you got to shave off or buy a $300 smaller intake. So it might have helped the company in saving money, so they could store, you know, a lot less pistons to fit the multiple sides. And then you can spend another $800 on a set of jugs for $1,200 or whatever it costs now. I mean, with the carnage inflation, like it's about to get worse. You know, it's disgusting. You know, they stay away from politics, Al. You know, don't vote for a liar. Don't vote for a thief. Don't vote for anybody. What do I know? I'm sure there's some honest people in politics, both these guys and us guys and those guys and these guys. I'm sure there is. There has to be. You know, just the odds. There might be a few. Yeah, so like even on my brother's 96, the Duke there, to get his compression where I wanted it, I went down to the machine shop and I had Al turn down my barrel. Now he wouldn't turn down the sleeve. I turned it down. Because the barrels that we had were for a 5-inch stroke and they were a tall barrel. And that would have gave them like crap compression. We want a little compression. Now we got a hot dog just a little bit. So I decided what I wanted. And I figured out the range, the height of the barrel to the pistons that I got from S&S. And then I did my numbers, and I went down to my machine shop and I said, Al, can you please turn this down for me? And he did. And he did a perfect job. In fact, when you know how you pre-fit your manifold on the heads, you know, before you add your bands and stuff on a shovel head, it was one of the most beautiful fits I ever seen. God bless you all. I love you, man. He's done a few projects for me. Hey, he's an old European. They're the best of the best, those guys. Yeah, and that came out really, really good. Okay, so, yeah, so now when you're honing a cylinder, right, like I start off with an 80 grit, and then I get within, you know, 3 thou, and then I go to my finishing hones. Like anything else that I've been discussing, I am disgusting some days, but anything like I've been discussing, the biggest thing is, okay, your heat. So if you say you're honing the cylinder and you're getting close or wherever, you want to do a measurement, the problem is this thing's now hot and has expanded. And you got to walk away from it You gotta let it cool down before you get an accurate measurement. You know, say you're doing your finishing hone, you know you're close, and you don't take the time to let it cool down. You take a measurement and say, oh, I got my, like in Tom's case here, these S&S pistons. Let me get out my heavy equipment here. You know, if you look at the difference between close fit, there we go, that should work, and loose fit. Now, close fit on Tommy's is 1.5 to 2. Loose fit on Tommy's is 2 to 2.5. The wrist pin fit that we were just doing, right, is 0.0007, so just over half a thou to 0.0014. So you do have a grace, okay? You do have a saving grace. Now, I don't like going to the lowest. It depends who I'm building the engine for. All right, Mother and my brother, the Duke, they seem to have little patience. When I built, like, I don't know what it was, 25 years ago, I did a 4 5/8 stroke on the Duke's FLH shovel head. And so now I brought all my tolerances like right to spec, man. And yes, everything rolled beauty. It was art. It was art at the time. And I really got on his case about how to break it in. And he did an awesome job. So my brother, he's no lightweight. Okay, he's older now and starting to look a little skinny. But back then he was like, he was a flying Cossack, man, a big Russian warrior. And his old lady, she voluptuous. And those two would pack 150 pounds of gear on the back of this thing. And those two are like two kids on a honeymoon, right? And they were everywhere, up and down. You know, we're not in the prairies. And the last thing you want to do is lug your engine. You will rip apart. You will. You'll squirt the crap out of your cylinders and your pistons by lugging it, chugging it. You know, you're doing a break-in on these top ends. You want to keep her in around 2,500 RPM to 3,500 RPM if you can. And you don't just sit there. Okay, I'm gonna go to Vancouver today. I'm gonna break in my engine. Okay, cool. Do that. The time I get home, hey, she's well broken in. So that's 500 miles, 1,000 miles. Now S&S recommends a couple thousand miles, and they do that on purpose. So people think that they need to do this because there's too many clowns. They buy themselves a stroker thing off the shelf and they put it in their bike, and then they go and show off and they wreck their engine. And then they try to blame it on the manufacturer or the mechanic. I said, no, that don't work, dude. So I always give a guy a sheet, a break-in sheet that I got from S&S. And here, have one of these, read that, make it your gospel, and go break in your engine. When I did Uncle Bradford's 98,